Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I've always maintained on this platform that in politics, nothing happens out of mere coincidence. Everything in politics is normally well planned, well scripted, and executed to achieve a specific political objective. Yesterday was a very important day in this country for the Deputy President and his party and supporters. The UDA party held its National Delegates Conference meeting, and during that event, the Deputy President was formally nominated to fly the UDA flag in the upcoming general election. And for those who monitored that event very closely, there were several other leaders who were present. And one leader whose presence caught my attention was Moses Kuria. And as that event was unfolding, there was a flyer of an interview between Moses Kuria, David Murathe on Citizen TV. But Moses Kuria failed to show up for that interview. But I listened very closely to David Murathe during that interview. And David Murathe delivered a message to the Kikuyu nation. So in this video today, I want us to look at the message which David Murathe delivered to the Kikuyu nation. And because in politics nothing happens out of mere coincidence, that message which David Murathe was delivering was actually intended to achieve a specific political objective. So I want us to do a critical analysis of this part of David Murathe's speech.
As far as we are concerned, Raila Odinga, at almost 50-50 with Uhuru Kenyatta. Remember in 2013, we scraped through the 50+1 with like 80,000 votes, all right? Meaning, and Raila never got Mount Kenya votes. Meaning this time around, worst case scenario, Raila gets Mount Kenya votes, whether 10, 20, 30, 40%. That is votes he never had anyway. But the rest of his vote basket is intact. The only area which they thought they could remove, which is Western, Raila actually defeats Musalia, even in Western. Musalia's own governor is ODM, and he had run an ANC governor. His own MCA, ODM.
And what you're saying in a nutshell is whatever happens in Mount Kenya, to you, the Azimio has the front.
In fact, for Mount Kenya, and this is a message to Mount Kenya, Raila is winning this election. They better decide whether he's winning it with them on board or he's winning it without them on board. Well, because if Raila wins it without them on board, they know they will be consigned to the dustbin. And probably this is the strategy of the Deputy President, because his job is basically to isolate and alienate Mount Kenya from the rest of the country.
David Murathe, some would say you're being rather presumptuous this evening. The voters
in
finally
terms of what?
will have the final say. It's 3 months to the election. You sound like
I told you we'll go directly to the people. I told you we are going directly to the people, and we are appealing to the people. We'll be talking to the people. The president himself has stuck out his neck, telling the people he thinks he knows what is good for them. The president has a democratic right to choose who he wants. He wants to explain to the people. He did it in Sagana 2 or Sagana 3. And we are telling the people of Mount Kenya, with or without your vote, because you have never given Raila anyway, under the current circumstances, he's going to be president. Because you can be sure Raila is going to get some votes in Mount Kenya region this time around. It's as simple as that. I'm not being presumptuous. And by the way, you know the attrition rate in Mount Kenya. In Mount Kenya, the attrition rate of sitting candidates is 70 to 80%. Last time, all the governors went home in Mount Kenya, with the exception of Mwangi wa Iria. You know, it's a fact. MPs, like I think there was 1 or 2 who survived, Kaninikega in Nyeri, and who else? I can't even remember who else survived in the region. Let me tell you, this is a slaughter. And in fact, we are glad that we are not going to carry that baggage of the sitting MPs, because most of them will go home anyway.
No, that's David Murathe. And if you listen very closely and keenly, there is a message which David Murathe delivered raw. In this country, I've learned to listen to several other politicians. I always pay very close attention to what Junet Mohammed is saying, because Junet Mohammed is actually the mouthpiece of Raila Odinga. So whenever Junet Mohammed speaks, I take it to be Raila Odinga speaking, especially on a serious and very important national matter. Whenever Oscar Sudi speaks, I take whatever Oscar Sudi says very strongly, because Oscar Sudi speaks the mind of the Deputy President, Dr. William Samoei Arap Ruto, at any given time, especially what the DP cannot say. And of late, I've started monitoring and taking paying keen attention to whatever Cleophas Malala, the senator for Kakamega, is saying, because Cleophas Malala just started joking around about working with the Deputy President, and people were joking. He started talking about Mudavadi leaving Oka. People thought he was just joking, you know, but whatever he was doing and whatever he was saying came to pass. So whenever David Murathe speaks, I take it very seriously because of 3 or 4 reasons. Number one, David Murathe speaks for President Uhuru Kenyatta. He's a very close ally of the president. In fact, if you look at people close to President Uhuru Kenyatta, one of the closest allies of President Uhuru Kenyatta is David Murathe. And when David Murathe started speaking after the handshake, most people thought he was wrong. Most people thought he was mad. Whatever David Murathe stated those times came to pass. Number two, David Murathe has been part and parcel of the deep state. So whatever David Murathe states basically represents the thinking of the deep state. Sometimes he speaks, he lets people talk, he goes underground. But whatever he states is basically the thinking of the deep state. And number three, David Murathe has always also communicated what the president wants you to hear. So I take the message which David Murathe was passing to the Kikuyu nation as a message from President Uhuru Kenyatta to the Kikuyu nation. And the message is simple. Raila Odinga is going to be the next president of the Republic of Kenya. And is going to be the next president of the Republic of Kenya with or without the support of the Kikuyu nation. So he was basically telling them that you have to make a choice whether to be on the winning side or to be on the losing side. But whichever position you take, Raila Odinga is going to be the next president of the Republic of Kenya. So before we get into all those details, if you are watching this channel for the first time, please take a second or two, click the subscribe button so that next time we produce a video like this, YouTube will automatically notify you. And to the subscribers, I want to continue. Thank you guys for your continued support, because without that support, this channel cannot be where it is. Now let us get back to the main business. What message was David Murathe trying to pass? Message number one, that Raila Odinga has always won, but his victories have always been robbed. And therefore, this time around, with the support of the deep state, Raila Odinga is going to become the next president of the Republic of Kenya. Why do I believe that's the message David Murathe was telling these people? David Murathe gave the example of 2013. During 2013 election, if you remember, there was the issue of some, was it 8,000 votes or was it 80,000 votes, which allowed President Uhuru Kenyatta to be declared the president. Otherwise, what was going to happen was that Kenyans were going to go for a rerun, and these guys were not going to allow that. So the truth of the matter is that President Uhuru Kenyatta's votes were inflated, and that's what led to President Uhuru Kenyatta being declared the president. In fact, if you followed the elections at that time, it reached a point where the courts had to determine what votes cast was, the percentage of registered voters, and just to favor President Uhuru Kenyatta at that particular time. So basically, he was telling these people that this guy has always won without your support. Now you have to make the choice. Number two, the second message is telling the Kikuyu nation is that it is time for you guys now to decide. You must decide whether to be with Raila Odinga or whether to be with the deputy president. I think the president has now decided that for him, he's going to go and campaign with for Raila Odinga with those who are willing to be part of the winning team. So let us wait and see how the events are going to unfold. And the third message which also sending, especially to the Kikuyu nation and the deputy president and his brigades, is that despite the fact that William Ruto is being followed by so many members of parliament, that does not reflect on the actual position on the ground. He gave examples that in the last election, the only people who made it, who came back to parliament, were actually two, Kanini Kega, and he couldn't even remember the second guy from the central Kenya. And of course, if you look at the history of this country, the turnout is normally very high. What I mean is, if you go for an election, chances of elected leaders coming back are normally very minimal. 85% of them normally don't make it back to parliament. And this is the message which David Murathe is telling these people. Because the deputy president is always bragging that he has enough following. He has enough members of parliament following him. He has enough members of senators and MCAs. So David Murathe is telling them, as much as you have those people, 85% of them will not make it. And he gave the example of Moses Kuria, for example, that Moses Kuria managed to win in the last election, but in a polling station of 800 people, he was awarded 4,000 votes. You know? So if Moses Kuria could be awarded those votes, what about President Uhuru Kenyatta in that particular election? And lastly, and this is very important, David Murathe is just telling the Kikuyu nation that the elections in this country are normally determined by several other factors. One of them is the votes which you cast, but importantly, there is an element of deep state. Deep state will determine who becomes the next president of the Republic of Kenya. Let us wait and see how this whole situation is going to unfold. But I think David Murathe successfully managed to deliver his message to the Kikuyu nation. And I was talking to someone yesterday, and this guy gave me a clear picture of what is really happening in the larger Mount Kenya region. And he gave me the case of Meru County, which is basically Mount Kenya East. This guy was very clear that as far as he's concerned, Raila Odinga is already ahead in that region with the 60%. And he gave me all the scenarios, and personally, I was convinced. But I want to ask you, if you come from the larger Mount Kenya region, is Raila Odinga making headways? David Murathe was telling them that Raila Odinga is going into this election with the full knowledge that he has never received any support from the larger Mount Kenya region. So any support he's going to receive is actually going to be an added advantage. The only challenge is that William Ruto has also worked very hard and has managed to penetrate Raila Odinga's former strongholds. Like if you go to coastal region, if you go to western, he has actually made some inroads there. But Uhuru Kenyatta also managed to win some of the areas in those particular regions. So let us wait and see how these elections is going to move on forward. Thank you guys, and may you have a good day. Bye-bye.